Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Marcus Borley, and I'm the project manager for the Local Resources Network. And I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, where we're going to hear from two local advisors who are members of the Local Resources Network. We'll be hearing from Deepak Sharma from Business Advisors for Sustainability and Ethics. Deepak will be telling us a little bit about how to get around some of the challenges of subcontractors when it comes to supply chain monitoring. We'll also hear from Parvathy Madappa from Cividep in India, who will tell us a little bit about their project with implementing childcare facilities in garment factories in India.
Yeah, Cividep did this project called Promoting Childcare, Early Childhood Care and Education for Children of Garment Factory Workers in Bangalore. This project can we move on to the next slide? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about this whole project. Cividep started in the year 2000 with through Oxfam funding to give workers awareness on worker rights. So in the year 2012, there was a garment sector roundtable that was created among various stakeholders. This had suppliers, this had brands and civil society bodies who came together, who worked along with the State Commission of Child Rights to bring out a report. So on the quality of childcare facilities that are available in the garment factories in Bangalore. So when this report was out, they saw that there were many factories which did not have proper childcare facilities, and those who did, many factories who did not have creches at all, and those who did also did not follow the rules and regulations. So that's how Cividep thought of one such project so that we could look at improving the quality of childcare in Bangalore garment factories. So the need for this project was is that there are more than about 5 lakh women workers who work in this in garment factories in Bangalore, and majority of these women, like if you look at the concentration, it's about 85% women and 15% of men in the garment factories. All these women are in the age group of 18 to 40 years, which is a highly reproductive age. So in such factories, the situation is that the salaries are very low. They get a daily wage of about 262 rupees, and these children of garment factory workers are neglected, and they either we have seen cases where older children are there to take care of younger children at homes, or they are just left behind at their homes by themselves. Also, when we look at the government, the Indian law, it says the central law states that if there are more than 50 women in the garment factories, it's the responsibility of the factory to provide a creche facility. But when we look into it deeper into the Karnataka state laws, it says that if there are more than 30 women workers in any factory, they are supposed to provide creche facilities. So how do the factories not take this up as a responsibility is that they do have a creche, designated space that is given for a creche, but then they do not encourage workers to bring their children to the factories. That's one thing, and the other thing is, or they give them excuses saying that there is no teacher available, there is no caretaker, so women are forced not to bring their children. And yeah, we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah, so this project was funded by the BMZ, that's the Federal Ministry of Economic Development and Corporation, Germany, and our project partners are Femnet, which is a feminist organization in Germany, and also they are a representative of the Clean Clothes Campaign. So this project started in February 2015, and we wrapped up this project in January 2016. Yeah, the next slide. Thank you. This project had various activities that we did through the 11 months, and also we started off with a small needs assessment which we carried out. Though we had two earlier reports, one by SWIDEP and the Fair Labor Association, and the State Commission, the Karnataka State Commission of Child Rights, also brought out a report. So we had a baseline of both these reports which strongly said that there was a need for childcare facilities, but we wanted to work around with two brands that supply that have a huge supply chain, that is H&M and CNA. So we thought we should do a basic study of some of their factories, and in this project we studied 4 of their factories with an objective to establish good quality creche in these 4 factories. And yeah, so this study started in April 2015, and we finished it by June 2015. By July, the report was out. So yeah, so this was the first part of the project that we initiated. Next slide, please. So I'd like to share some of the findings of this study. When I mentioned that we studied 4 factories which were supplying to, out of which 3 of them were supplying to H&M, and sorry, all four of the factories were supplying to H&M, and 3 of them were supplying to CNA. So one of the findings that we had was that there were very few children in the creche. Basically, in all the 4 creches, when we looked at it, there was one factory which did not have a creche at all, and there were no children. And in the remaining 3 factories, the number of children were compared as in comparison to the number of workers out there. Also, there was hardly any facilities to take care of children. Like the ratio of caretaker to children was very low. Like there was one caretaker for about 20 children. These creches were next to big construction sites, which had constant dust and pollution and a lot of noise. So the creche was situated right next to a construction site. These caretakers were not trained. Plus, we got to know that they do additional duties, like they supply tea to the workers and the management in leaving the children by themselves and going to supply tea, coffee. In some of the factories, you find a creche, but then you would not find any kind of material given to the children, like no child development activities carried out, no kind of teaching being done. So, and then the other thing is where I say flimsy grounds for exclusion, they would not, if suppose a worker had 2 children below the age of 6 years, so the law entitles that any worker having children below the age of 6 years can be brought to the creche, whereas in this case you would have if a worker had 2 children, the management would tell the worker that only 1 child is allowed. So the parent was forced to either leave the child behind in the village with the grandparents, or just leave them back at home by themselves. There was in all the 4 factories, there was no medical records that were found of the children. So there was no health checkups, no one to in case the child falls ill, there was nobody to take care of the children. And in one, like I mentioned earlier, one of these 4 factories did not have a creche facility at all. So they used to give compensation of rupees 200 per month towards putting the child elsewhere. But which was, I don't know, I think it's really low, because an external childcare facility would at least ask for about, even the cheapest one would charge about 3,000 rupees for a month. Also, in another ground for exclusion, another thing that was excluded was they would not allow children below the age of 1 year to be brought to the creche, because they would say that there's no one to take care of really small infants. And also there was exclusion of children above the age of 4 years. So even if there was a child who was 1 year, 2 months old in the creche, the parents, if she was feeding the child, they would not be allowed to meet the children. And also each of these factories have certain committees. Then we found out that there is no committee for, there was no creche committee or any place where the parents could go and speak about the grievance mechanism, I mean any of the problems that they have. So there was no grievance mechanisms in any of these 4 factories. Yeah, Marcus, next slide please. And some other findings was that women would stay away from, would actually leave their job at their 7th, 6th, 7th month of pregnancy, and they would only come back and join later after a year or more, because like I mentioned earlier, children would not be allowed into the creche. Children who were less than a year old would not be allowed inside the creche, so women stayed away from work, which means that they lose out on all their social security benefits that are entitled to them. Also, we have a figure which says that more than half of the women who interviewed have changed many jobs because of childbirth. So this results in any kind of growth in the factory, or also, and the bigger thing is that they would lose out on all their social security measures like gratuity benefits or the provident fund. So when they are not employed, then they would lose out on all these benefits. So also we saw that there was a very low child to worker ratio in these factories, like very few children compared to the number of workers in the factory, and also that workers would just leave their children back in their villages or with neighbors or with aged parents, and they would constantly keep worrying about whether their child is safe back at home. There has been instances of children going to school, children who are 4-year-old going to preschool, coming back, and there would be a bag left outside the house where the child eats food and just sleeps outside. So we have seen instances like this also. So we had asked them, posed a question to the workers saying, would you be happy and satisfied if you, what kind of thing would make you happy? So then they would responded to us saying that if there is a good creche in the factory, then we are relaxed, and I think they said that they could concentrate more on work. So we thought that if there was a good creche, then the mothers would be less worried, which would increase the productivity as well in these factories. Yeah. Next slide, please. So as a part of the project, we also had a roundtable meeting with different stakeholders. We invited brands, we invited manufacturers, we invited non-governmental organizations or civil societies, and we invited a lot of child experts so that we could discuss on the need of this of childcare in the garment factories. So this meeting brought out a lot of discussions. We had we also invited government bodies like the State Commission that is there in Karnataka. So we had a lot of inputs that that came up saying that the need was there, but then they did not know how could they implement one such thing, because they needed trained teachers, and how do we bring trained teachers to these factories? So yeah, this was the first stakeholder meeting to discuss on the need of childcare and what could be done in this area. Next slide, please. Another meeting we thought which was very important was to call the manufacturers. So apart from the 4 factories that we surveyed, we also called some more some more managers, some more factory management who were like senior HRs in the organization. We thought it would be we wanted to get to know from them, as in what are the difficulties that they have in having good quality functional creches in their factories. So they came up with reasons like they did not have space to have children. Like initially the factory started with maybe 200 employees, and then it grew, so they don't have the space for these children, and they don't have trained teachers. They do not know where to hire these trained teachers from. And they brought out all their problems. So we in the forum there was a small discussion as to how we could how CVDEP could help in help them to get trained teachers. And yeah, so this we thought was a very important meeting, because we got to know the problems that actually the factories, the supply chain faces in implementing a particular law. Yeah. So after we finished the manufacturers, the meeting with the top management in the factories, we thought it was very good to train the welfare officers, because these are the people who actually oversee the functioning of a creche in a factory. So more than 10 or 12 factories sent two welfare officers from each of their factories, who we called it an expert, child care expert, who has experience in setting up creches. So we call them to train them on few things that they can change in their existing creche, so that it could benefit the teacher. I mean, it could benefit the children as well as the workers there. So this was the start of the whole thing, wherein we thought that if we train these welfare officers, they would be able to disseminate the information to the other caretakers or the teachers or the nurses who are there in the creche. So that was one of the trainings that we conducted. Can we have the next slide, please? When we had Dr. Gisela Buka from Femnet, who was in India, and we had a meeting with brands and multi-stakeholder initiatives. This meeting was conducted through Femnet, so that Femnet wanted to put pressure on the brands and the the MSI bodies to say that it is their responsibility to look at the functioning of Creche, because when we asked them about how their audit mechanisms work, they just said that they just asked them they posed a question saying that do you follow the law of the land, and if it's a tick mark, yes. So there is no extra question. So what we tried to tell the brands was maybe 3 other questions, like do you have creche in your factory, or is it are there children in the creche? So these will be a little these are the inputs that we gave that you could do, so that you can at least try to establish good quality creches in your supply chain, is what we tried to speak to them about. We had Fairway Foundation, we had Labor Association who attended this meeting as part of the MSIs, and we had, as part of the brands, we had Gap, we had Mothercare, we had CNA who had come for the program. We did invite many other brands, but they didn't turn up. Yeah. So the next slide, please. At one point in time when we had the meeting with the top management, it was also shared with us that the teachers in these factories or the caretakers lack training. So we identified one training center called Hippocampus Learning Center. These they are actually experts in early child education. So and they have established a lot of schools in rural villages in Karnataka. They are slowly growing, and they've set up few schools in Maharashtra as well. So they set up these schools in rural areas so that children can access good quality education. So CVD came in contact with them, and we got a trainer who could train the teachers for 3 days on basics of childcare and education. So over 15 to 8, I think about 18 factories send their staff for these trainings. Yeah, so it was a 3-day training with where knowledge was imparted as to what are the things that how can you start with education of children in these creches, what are the basic necessities, basic things that are required in a creche to take care of children and other facilities. Yeah, so we had this kind of training. The next slide, please. The other thing that we did after this was we thought it was very good to train the trade unions on better campaigning in these factories for childcare facilities. So we invited some few expert lawyers who could speak on the law and who could speak on and we had a child expert who spoke on why it is important to have good quality creches, as it helps in because it proves that it's a proven thing that the majority of the brain development happens between the age group of 0 to 6 years. So we try to speak to the union activists about how important it is for them to actually campaign for better quality childcare in the garment factories. So along with the childcare benefits, there was also knowledge that was important on maternity benefits that are available for these women. Yeah, this training was conducted so that they could campaign and bargain for better quality childcare, and which would overall improve the working condition of these women in the factories. Yeah, next slide, please. So towards the end of the project, we had a last multi-stakeholder roundtable where we thought it was important for us to share the activities that we did through the year, and also where we had invited experts who could speak on nutrition for children and education for children. So we had invited some academicians and doctors and experts in other childcare, like the Hippocampus Learning Center, who are experts in setting up creches. So we invited various people to this platform so that they could discuss, and they could also disseminate, also that CVDEP could share with the stakeholders as the work that went in 1 year towards this project. So yeah, this was the last roundtable that we had. So can we have the next slide, please? But when we look at what is the results that we achieved in this project, we have had 4 factory out of the 4 factories that we have studied, these 4 factories have 18 units. So each factory has like 5 or 6 units. So we had 3 of these factories who had who were supplying to CNA. So CNA has agreed with CVDEP on improving the quality. They have 34 supply chains in currently in India, and out of that they have taken a pilot of 6 factories where they are where they did a research on the quality of childcare that is present at now. They brought it out in a meeting with CVDEP and said that yes, yes, we were right that the quality is not good. So they are looking at improving 6 of their supply chains over the next 1 year. So every 3 months they share with us a progress report of what are the new things that they have made, they have added into these 6 creches. So this was one of our achievements. Also, CNA has agreed to change their audit format so that they could include some more aspects of childcare in their audit mechanisms. When we approached H&M, they had refused to cooperate, so we couldn't do much with them. But the other thing is also that the Karnataka State Commission for Child Rights, they are interested to work with us so that they can make. So this commission is a statutory body which can pass out orders which is supposed to be followed. So they are ready to work to improve on legislations on childcare in the garment factories. So these are some results that we have achieved through this project. Can we move on to the next slide? In short, I'll just tell that what we want to do in future. Since the State Commission for Protection of Child Rights has agreed to work with us, so we want to work along with the Labour Department so that there could be regular inspection of these kindergartens or creches in these factories. We'd also want to work with the government to incorporate child welfare committees in these factories, so that this could be a grievance mechanism that workers can avail. Also, we want to advocate with the state and central government to amend legislations, and also to make there is the early childcare education policy which was passed in the year 2013, but it's not been enforced strictly. So we want to work with the state and central government so that this could be enforced in all the places which run creches in Bangalore, looking keenly into the garment sector at least. Also, in the year 2012, the State Commission passed an order that the creches have to have Balasevika trained teachers to take care of children, but it's not been enforced very strictly. So we want to work on this aspect as well. Also, we want to have a consultation with other German brands on the theme of business and child rights to make them aware of how important it is for them to actually check into the quality of childcare that's provided in their supply chain, as businesses would also have a serious impact on this issue. Another thing is also so that we could encourage other civil societies or child rights-based NGOs to work together, and so that we could demand for better childcare facilities in the factories, and to also file applications under the RTI, so to collect information on what is the status of the factory creches at the moment. And another part is also we would want to give more trainings to the trade unions so that they'd be able to campaign for childcare, better quality childcare, and also if trade unions could be if someone from the trade unions could be appointed and trained to be able to inspect the quality of creches along with the labor department. So these are something that we want to do in the next few years. We'll be working on another 2-year project which shortly. So these are some of the future work that we want to do in this area. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Bhavathi. I'm just going to open up very, very quickly for 2 to 3 minutes for a couple of questions before we then move on to the second speaker.
Sure.
It was a very good presentation. Thank you. I'm not going to take up the time by asking questions, but I'm sure there are others that would like to ask questions at this stage. Do we have any questions from
Sure.
participants? Let's have a look. Okay, no questions yet.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. Okay. We have one which says, very nice presentation. Do you have a roadmap for, and the question stops there. Moon, would you like to complete the question? A roadmap for, I guess, a roadmap for next steps from where you go from here.
Yeah. So the what I shared with you in the last was what we want to do in the future. So we are working on one such project where we can work more. At the first level, we just started working with a few of the managements, but we thought we should work more with managements also. Especially, we should work with managements on a more senior level, like maybe heads of business. So far, we just work with the senior HR manager. So we think that in the end, the person who has to implement is the boss of the factory. So we want to work with the heads of business, and we want to do more work with government, so central and state government, so that we could, because these are the main people who actually have the power to do a lot of things. So also not letting go of the plants and MSIs here. Yes, this is something that we want to do.
Okay, excellent. Another question is, there are 2 questions. We'll take those 2 questions and then we'll move on. So the first one is, how do you monitor implementation of these childcare facilities? And then the second question is, do you have any plans to scale up from this project that you've done?
Scale up, yeah. In our next project, we are looking at not scaling up to a huge extent, because we do not have we are not experts on child care. So we also work with other child rights based organizations or civil societies whose interests are child rights. So we work with them. So right now in the next project, we're looking at 20 factories, and we are looking at concentrating on 5 to 10 brands. So yeah, that's that's the part of the scaling up. And the other question, sorry, Marcus.
Yeah, that's great.
You had another question.
The other question, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop there and encourage people to get in touch with you if they have other questions. Because what I'd like to do now is I'd like to give Deepak a bit of a chance to tell us a little bit about their organisation and the work they've been doing with supply chain monitoring, particularly around subcontractors, because I know that this is a challenge, and there are a lot of people that are interested in hearing from Deepak on what they're doing here. So I think I'll just close there now and say thank you very much, both for giving time, for preparing a presentation, for joining us this morning and sharing your experience.
Thanks, Marcus. A very good morning to everybody. My name is Deepak Sharma, and I represent this company called Business Advisors for Sustainability and Ethics. You can also call it BASE. Basically, we are into auditing, monitoring, trainings, hand-holding, capacity building projects in different tiers of supply chain, primarily the apparel sector, the handicraft sectors. I'm basically a qualified auditor for various international certification standards. Having worked in different tiers of supply chain, I've worked with in the spinning sector, the fabric manufacturing, dyeing sector, and also worked with the brand side, the buying agencies and retailers. During one of my tenures with my previous employer, which was a retailer, we happened to do some work on the monitoring of subcontractors, which in fact is a very vast area. I was just thinking about that when I was putting these slides, whether I'll be able to cover the entire thing, but I think I've just tried to figure out or throw up some interesting learnings and techniques which maybe you can take back and implement in your areas of work. So what we, yeah, you can move to the next one. So what we are going to do is we will talk about the supply chain management, which involves mapping, monitoring, and the management of supply chain, including the subcontractors, subcontractors. You can increase it to the home workers. You can also cover the suppliers, depending on the type of operations you have and type of requirements you foresee. Next slide. So what exactly is a subcontracting unit when we are talking about? What happened was earlier when we were doing the audits, we were implementing a lot of the requirements in the factories. But over the period of time, we started looking at the areas where the production was happening outside, and this was a very vulnerable area. So a lot of issues, as also highlighted by Marcus, were there in the supply chain, which we thought were not, we were not very much aware about those issues. So what we started doing was we started getting into identifying what the subcontracting units were which needed to be managed and mapped. So anything that goes out of the factory for a part or complete process, in certain cases there are certain processes which completely happen outside the facility. So those are the subcontracting units which we were targeting and we were trying to map and monitor them. Sometimes we were also coming across scenarios where the entire core processes, which includes sewing, which sometimes included finishing like thread cutting, thread trimming, pressing, which that were going outside for the subcontracting work. So generally we were talking about the embroidery, which can be a computer or a hand or a die embroidery, printing on the garments and panels. So which is most of the time, sometimes it is brand revealing. We have certain prints which are revealing the brand, or sometimes you are printing the exact label on the garments. So those washing, when the entire garment goes out for washing, dyeing, then there can be certain style specific processes like stud fixing, some patch or floral design being attached to the garments or the panels, or some drawing quads being inserted in some of the product where the entire product goes outside and then it is brought back after the work. So those are the areas where we need to do the mapping and then leading to the monitoring of the supply chain. So next slide. So benefits, it is important that we understand the drivers, why the subcontracting is happening. So cost, definitely there is a cost advantage involved in this. The variety, some of the business models are actually based on the subcontracting model. So sometimes the jewelry sector, you'll see, most of the cases what they're doing is they're just going with the samples of these subcontractors, and the factory or the office just has a packing or a checking facility. The entire production is happening outside. You get the variety which is offered to the buyer for buying. The capacity enhancement, so you get more capacities outside your premises where you can get the work done at a nominal or a economical cost, which is a profit for the factory. The labor liability is reduced. These labor are not on the direct roles of the company, so there's no direct labor liability on the factory. The infrastructure advantage is definitely there, where the factories are using the infrastructure of the subcontracting site without having much to pay for that. So it helps in dealing with the inconsistent business that the factories would be getting. So these are some of the benefits that I listed out. And the problems which were against also the drivers for this monitoring program, the quality issues, the delivery issues, rejections and wastages. Looking at the length of the supply chain, the rejections and wastages increased drastically. Then there was another big area to tackle, which was the further subcontracting, leading to lack of supply chain visibility. Sometimes when the work is going outside the factory for subcontracting, it is actually going much beyond the first tier of subcontracting. So that becomes an area which is a risk for many stakeholders, including brands, including the factory. Then the compliance norms are not always met, because these areas are not always covered under the formal legal framework. So there are no specific legal requirements governing them, and also due to the poor visibility, the compliance norms were not met in all the cases. Next. Next slide. So mapping, how to map? I normally start this by saying that visibility improves many things even before we start working on them. It's just like a scenario where somebody is coming to your house and then you clean it up so that the person who is coming does not point out those issues to you. So even if anybody from the factory goes there and highlights few very basic things like the fire extinguisher is not properly placed, or it is not, it is an expired one. So these basic things also would sensitize the subcontractor that these requirements are not just a compliance requirement, but also coming out as the production requirements or the quality requirements. So a lot of things start improving in that case. Then taking the production and the quality teams on board is very important, so that they are aware about the needs. And in some cases, it also indirectly impacts their KRIs also. Like the lack of visibility can sometimes lead to the poor quality getting received from the subcontractors, or the delays in the delivery when they are actually not aware where the production is getting made. So they get the production at a later stage where they might have to squeeze in with the other things to meet the delivery terms. Visiting the existing subcontracting sites along with the production teams to map and assess risks is very important. You should go there, visit them, create awareness amongst the subcontracting. So you get the subcontractors on board, make a joint improvement, and you involve the subcontractors in doing a risk self-assessment of their processes, of their supply chain, and then taking them on board and making them aware about the requirements and how they can further work on that and improve on their systems. So you can utilize the external experts, which can be independent experts, or the third-party auditing inspection agencies who can get along with the factories to work with their production teams and map the supply chain to get more information for the brands and the factories. Next slide, please. So very brief on the basic minimum standards. These are not limited to the ones which are listed down here. It can increase or decrease depending on the type of model the brands could have. I have started with the most important ones, the no child labor and the no forced labor requirements, which are also highlighted by Marcus in the risk survey that they had done. It's very important you maintain the age proof of all the workers who are working in those subcontracting sites. Meet the basic health and safety standards. We're talking about very basic minimal health and safety standards. Now these can again increase or decrease depending on the size of the subcontracting unit. Payment of legal minimum wages to all workers. I understand there's a lot of work which is happening on the living wages now. But still, even if we are able to reach to the legal minimum wages being paid at these subcontracting sites and the further tiers, it will be a big step ahead. Asking the subcontractors to maintain transparent and documented terms of employment with the workers. So they need to have a clear understanding. Sometimes the skilled workers are in a better position to negotiate the terms with the employer, but the lesser skilled or the helper category workers, they don't have that ease of figuring out their terms with the subcontractors, and they end up getting paid less. So even if it is a piece rate system, They should have some sort of boards which can be displayed mentioning what is the piece rate, how much they will be offered, and in what times. This will also help you give an understanding whether they are meeting the legal minimum wages in that particular region. Transparent time recording system, again very important. It's also linked to calculating whether the wages being paid to the workers are meeting the legal minimum wages or not. Visibility to any further subcontracting. So the factories also need to tell the subcontractors that they need to maintain clear and transparent records of what is going beyond that particular site. Proper production records to be maintained, which would also give a very clear information how much production they are getting from different factories and how much they are further subcontracting, how much they are doing it in-house, which will give you an understanding which sites you need to cover under your mapping and the monitoring process. Next slide. So monitoring before this. Marcus, with one before this.
So this one before again? Monitoring, here we go.
Monitoring, you want, yes. Yes. So monitoring comes the next stage where the factory or the brand representatives can get into the monitoring of these mapped subcontracting sites. They can do it on their own. They can involve external experts. The one model that I worked on had the involvement of the external auditing agencies for which the supplier was paying. The reason being we wanted to have a contained supply chain so that the suppliers are themselves responsible for managing and sustaining the compliances at these subcontracting facilities. You start with the initial announced audits followed by the unannounced visit by the compliance team. You can involve the production teams while the production is going on to assess whether they are maintaining the same compliance levels at the one they had done initially and also during the production stages. So detailed audit will be conducted by the compliance teams or the HR teams of the factory. They can create a basic checklist involving maybe 25, 30 points covering basic requirements can be added to that. Like for child labor, they can just assess whether there is any underage worker in the facility, whether they are maintaining the age records for all the workers, whether they have a basic child labor policy displayed, and they have an understanding of what the legal age for working is, and what are their systems to ensure that no child labor comes inside the factory and they're not employing any underage workers. For health and safety, there can be basic questions like availability of potable drinking water, clean washrooms, provision of firefighting devices including fire extinguishers. They can also put something related to the first aid kits. So basic information can be put in those checklists, and then the monitoring can be done, and slowly and steadily it can be scaled up. Maintaining proper records and files. So once you start monitoring, you maintain proper files, records for the subcontractors. You check the improvement, what was raised, what were the issues highlighted in the initial visits, whether they closed those issues, whether the production is going on regularly to them, whether they are working regularly and consistently in improving the compliance scenarios, or this will give you a clear understanding whether they are actually working with the supplier and the brands on improving, or they are just at the initial stage only just taking the production and rest all things are just going on. Utilizing the production teams, it's very important because compliance team might not be going on a very regular basis to these subcontracting sites as compared to the production and the quality teams who are visiting these sites on a more frequent basis. You can involve them in identifying some of the basic issues related to health and safety, child labor, or any unsafe condition, or any undisclosed subcontracting. They can be involved, and for the other issues which are requiring a little bit of more expertise, the compliance teams then can pitch in and take it forward. So again, the experts can be utilized there. We involved a third-party auditing agency for the monitoring activity. Next slide, please. Another important area in subcontracting is the home working. This is basically the work which is being done from the home by the workers. So generally, as per the understanding of most of the people here or in this sector, it will be the hand embroidery in case of apparels, the handwork for the textiles that goes outside for this home working. There can be certain other areas where depending on the product range the factories or the brands are doing, the jewelry, most of the things are being done by the home workers. Scarves, some of the knotting processes, some of the hand weaving process sometimes is done at the homes. The embroidery on these scarves. Handicrafts, some of the handicrafts would go to the home working sector. We have footwear, the uppers getting embroidered at homes, the carpets and rugs is another example where home working can happen. It's not a bad thing to do home working. So the good thing is that they get the work done at their homes. They don't have to go outside and market their services themselves and get the work. So the subcontractor will come to them and give them the work and also the money. But the thing here is that there should not be an exploitation because of the vulnerability of this segment of the supply chain. The structure of the home working supply chains are really complex. So you have the first tier, it can go to the second tier, it can go to third or fourth tier also before reaching to the home workers. So the length of the supply chain is longer sometimes. They are difficult to map. They are working sometimes in very remote areas where you won't be able to reach easily. Some of the cultures prevent you from entering the houses of these workers, so which is again a hindrance and again leading to a vulnerable situation where the exploitation can happen and the people who want to do something, they are not able to reach to those sites. There are no laws governing the supply chain, hence again it's considered to be very vulnerable. And since there are a lot of tiers in the supply chain, the ultimate cost that is given to the home workers is sometimes really very small percentage of the total that is coming out from the factory. So there's a lot of this cost that is taken out by the tiers who are not adding much value. We did another very interesting project related to this work along with the ETI, which involved the value chain analysis, wherein we try to understand the value being added by different tiers in the supply chain, starting with the factory till the home workers. In fact, we also covered the brand payment in that case, how much the brand is paying the factory and then how much the home worker is getting, and relating it to the money that each stage was getting for that. And we tried to relate, although it was a very subjective analysis, but I think the overall gist that came out was not much money is paid to the final worker who's actually doing the entire job. So this tiers will lead to the poor payments to the home workers. Next slide. So what to expect? What is the basic? You can't do much in the houses of some of these workers. So what you can do as a minimum expectations, I have listed some of the learnings that we had. It's very important to map the supply chain of home workers. Normally it will be 50 to 70 home workers attached to one subcontractor, and then the subcontractors are added who can also be doing work at their own premises, and also they will be adding 10, 15, 20 another set of home workers. So mapping the subcontractors and their home workers is very important to understand the situation and then to work on that. You have a clear track of production allocation, how much they are receiving from the factory, how much they are allocating these pieces to different home workers. Try and correlate with the production time that is required to complete one piece, and whether they are getting the entire production done from the same set of home workers or not. Registration of all the home workers for eligibility to work. So very important, you register them with the subcontractors. You check whether they have the legal proofs of age with the subcontractor, just to to see whether they are sensitized, and there is a control over the age factor of the home workers. Transparent record of payments being made to the home workers by the subcontractors. So very important, how much they are getting, how much the home worker is finally taking, recording the production by the home workers as well. So we discussed, I think in Marcus' slide there was something related to SEVA, Self-Employed Women Association. They also had some, I'll be discussing the next slide on that. They had some interesting way of monitoring the recording of production by the home workers through the passbook models, wherein the workers were issued a passbook and then they record the entire production, which can be cross-checked with the records of the subcontractors to see whether the two are matching and whether these are the only set of home workers or there can be more undisclosed home workers. A formal contract between the factory and subcontractor, if it exists. If it doesn't, there should be certain set of conditions which should be laid down by the factory to the subcontractor so that they ensure that the same conditions are met for their home workers. It can include information related to the child labor, of course the costing, the commercials, the rest of the terms can be there, but some basic information related to the child labor not to be used. Some of the brands I'm coming across are also asking the factory to put in the amount of money that has to be paid to the home workers, where there is a concrete evidence and they know that it is going to the home workers. So they actually clarify that this is the amount that the factories need to pay to the home workers, and then that is what is monitored by the third party. Regular monitoring of supply chains by the factory and subcontractors for continuous mapping. So these home workers will keep on changing. So there can be more home workers added. The new ones can stop working. So continuous mapping and monitoring of this compliance by the subcontractors and the factory themselves is very important. Next, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the home working models that I have come across, there can be more now. I'm not sure whether these are also existing, but these are some of the interesting models that I have tried to highlight here. One is again run by Self-Employed Women Association, also called the SEVA model. What they're doing is they have these members who are operating in different communities. So they would come to the SEVA center and get some of the vocational trainings done, like the computer classes or stitching classes. So these are organized by SEVA to work as home workers. So the SEVA will act as a link between the factory and the home workers. The SEVA will take the work from the factory and then pass on the work to the home workers. So they collect it back and then submit it back to the factory and get paid for it. So they have a very clear, a very small percentage for their daily expenses, for their routine expenses, and rest entire money is passed to the home workers. This model ensures you have a clear, transparent supply chain. The length is reduced. The issues are reduced drastically. Another model is wherein the NGOs can come together, bring the home workers together to a common place, which can be sometimes a temple or a mosque or a common community center, where the home workers can come out. If they are willing to come out, they'll come out, they'll work at that site according to their convenience, do as many pieces as they want to, and then go back. So the benefit is you get a cleaner place to work. The production can be better controlled, better monitored by the factory. The costings, the cost that is paid to the home workers is better monitored. So some of these models are also now started by the exporters themselves, who are running these as a separate profit centers. So they're setting up an entire factory for home working, and then ensuring that the compliance norms and all the legal requirements which are applicable on a factory are applicable in those sites, and they are working on that. There was one more model which involved again ATI, again the UK. They initiated a national home working group which was working initially mainly in the Bareilly sector, which is very famous for the handwork. This involved collaboration of a group of subcontractors who came together under the moderation by ETI National Home Working Group, and they ensure that the basic compliance norms are met. No child labor, proper wages, health and safety, and whatever the requirements they ensured were being met. And then PTI National Home Working Group was marketing these models and ensuring that they get business for these set of subcontractors to have a more cleaner and a more transparent supply chain. Next slide. So benefits, you reduce the length of the supply chain, there's a better visibility of the supply chain, the compliance risk is very low. You know the issues are taken care by the NGOs. The payments are much better because the length of the supply chain has reduced drastically. The NGOs, since they are working on a no profit margin, they don't work on very high profit margin. They're just taking their routine expenses. So most of the money is being paid to the home workers. The production and quality advantage is also there, which we got the feedback from the production and the quality teams. The chain is much shorter. They can explain the requirements very well to the home workers directly. They know when the production will come out. So if there are any delays which they might see, they will take immediate action to ensure that the production is shifted somewhere else. So the transparency is leading to their better planning. But again, there are certain very problems in this model. The lack of business approach. I'm not talking here from from a negative point of view. Of course, the business approach is there, but comparing with the type of subcontracting models that they are competing with, sometimes the factories would feel that the business approach is missing. Sometimes they won't be having much resources to pick up the material, to deliver the material, which the subcontractors can handle more effectively, because they're just working on this particular model. Sometimes there might be some last minute changes which had to be taken in account by the NGO. So those are the areas where they slightly lack. And then there are not many models which are available as of now, wherein you can get such benefits and such transparency. Next slide. That's it, I think. So we are open for the questions now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Deepak. Very interesting look at some of the challenges with subcontracting, and also nice of you to share some of the models and the way that this has been worked with, the challenges and some of the benefits of working in these ways. Okay, I'm very aware of the fact that we're over time by 20 minutes, but I would still like, for those of us that are still here, to have a couple of minutes now, just for a couple of questions for Deepak, and then we'll sort of round up for this session. So, are there any questions for Deepak? What one question then is, what wage should be paid to these workers? How do you sort of define skilled, unskilled, semi-skilled? Is that a challenge?
It's a big challenge. Most of the time, we would see the operations that are going to the home workers are skilled operations. So the type of operations you can also cross-check with the legal minimum wages act or the notification that come on in different states from time to time. But most of the processes, like we say an embroidery, will fall at least in a skilled category, skilled or a highly skilled category. So what we normally say is you can correlate this with the legal minimum wages. So let's say if you have a legal minimum wage of 80 rupees or 100 rupees for an 8 hours shift, you can break it down to an hourly wage that is acceptable by legal norms, and then see how much is the piece rate and how much time is required to complete that particular piece. So that gives you an idea of how much piece rate is paid. Let's say a piece rate is paid for a work of 1.5 hours. A piece takes around 1.5 hours to complete. So accordingly, you can break the 100 rupees, which is the legal minimum wages, to per hour and then to 1.5 hours, and then correlate whether the piece rate that is being paid to the home worker and what you are getting by correlating it with the legal minimum wage, are they matching, or is there a very striking difference between them? So if there is, then definitely you'll have to work with the factory on seeing where the margins are getting corroded, or whether the factory is paying sufficiently to the home workers or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, because one question here is there a basic minimum wage for home workers? So your answer to that question is the minimum wage is the same, should be the same as sort of a national standards.
Yes. Otherwise, there is no norm for the home workers for this.
No.
You just need to work on the legal minimum wages for that.
Mm-hmm. An interesting question here as well is around tracking and monitoring social security payments. Are these home workers, presumably they're self-employed then, they're not sort of employed by the subcontractors, largely self-employed, so is there any sort of monitoring of not just payment but also payment to social security schemes, pension funds, these kind of things?
No, there is not. I think there is some law wherein the factory has to deduct the social security and submit to the legal authorities, but again the monitoring and implementation of this aspect is very very poor, or it's not, you can say it's as good as not implemented. Reason being, there is a very variable type of supply base that you have. So you're working with one set of home workers maybe in one season, or maybe just for a couple of styles, and then you're not working with them. So it's very difficult to maintain a consistency on that. And then again, when you talk about the subcontracting who are passing on this work to the home workers, they are not covered under any formal legal licensing schemes. So they won't get a formal social security number wherein they can make their payments. So it's more like they, even if they want to deduct or want to pay to the legal authorities the social security, they are not able to do that. So there are limitations, and it's not much happening or not implemented.
Interesting. So one final question, and that is that you mentioned earlier that in your research, your approaches, you try to define the value added by each stage in the supply chain, and your main finding was that invariably the intermediaries are subcontractors, and there are lots of tiers between them and the actual home workers, and these don't really add any real value other than the network that they have. We see this kind of issue increasingly in other areas where, so for example, buying companies are trying to look to consolidate their supply chains. Could you foresee in the future maybe certain factories trying to sort of cut out the subcontractor and going into individual relations, having like a pool of home workers that they can use for certain processes, or is that not sort of likely to happen?
I think factories directly working with home workers is not practically very easy.
No.
So that's the reason, if you see the NGO models that have come up, the role of subcontractor has been taken over by a subcontractor, but still there is somebody in between the factory and the home workers. That's I think is going to remain. The areas which can open up is more transparent and more shorter models, wherein the factory knows what is happening at the home working front, and then they can work to improve the conditions. The subcontractor has to be on board, or if they are not on board, then take some non-profit NGO models in that case. But directly dealing with the home workers will be a different ball game altogether. I think the type of resources that they need to have in these cases is again a very big question. Then the how many home workers they can control. There can be cases where at a time the factory's production is going to 50 or 100 villages. Each village might be having 15, 20, 30, whatever you can say, the number of home workers. So dealing with such huge figures is again difficult. But yes, in smaller cases where the work is going on very consistently, they have one set of home workers. Like if you see some of the models we have, the IKEA model where you have the carpets being made in the home. So they are much better positioned to deal directly with the home workers. It also, I think the challenges are there, but it depends on the type of model the factories and the brands have that can give them leverage to work directly with the home workers.
Interesting. Excellent. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap up there basically just by saying thank you very much, Deepak, for your presentation. Thank you also earlier to Parvathy for hers. Thank you everyone else for joining us for this webinar this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I hope it's been useful. I've certainly thoroughly enjoyed the presentations, learnt lots, and that's kind of, in a way the whole reason for the Local Resources Network is to bring people together and to share experience, for us to learn from each other, and also to connect. And who knows? Hopefully you'll go back after this webinar and make some connections with either the speakers or others in the local resources network in India. Final point for me before I finish, and that's that we've just launched our new website, and as part of that process we have a new look and feel for the member profiles. So please go in, have a look at your profile, update it, and in particular we're asking all local resources, all advisors to add in a couple of projects that they've worked on, so we can use those to help profile each individual member. I think I'll wrap up there. Thank you very much everybody, and have a lovely day.